We Who Wrestle With God, a book review. I have read all of Jordan B. Peterson's publicly available works. I have been subscribed to his YouTube channel for years and began following his content long before he became widely known in the United States, shortly before the controversy that catapulted him to fame in Canada. I thoroughly enjoyed 12 Rules for Life, and the book had a significant positive impact on my life. It inspired improvements in various aspects of my life: marriage, a corporate career, the relationship with my father, and yes, even cleaning my room. Things that have become shaky since then. Afterward, I read Maps of Meaning. While insightful, it felt like an earlier, less refined, and more diffused version of 12 Rules for Life. Following that, I eagerly picked up Beyond Order, 12 More Rules for Life, which was initially rumored to be Rules for Chaos, Jordan's counter to the perceived conservatism of his more popular book. Unfortunately, this book was a major disappointment for me. I understand that Peterson was going through a difficult time during its writing, but the work felt philosophically shallow and lacked the depth I had come to expect from him. I felt as though I had wasted my money on that purchase. During this period, I occasionally subscribed to Daily Wire, mostly to access his exclusive content, as his biblical lectures on Genesis were remarkable, which eventually led to him being hired by the Daily Wire. These lectures offered deep and thought-provoking insights. However, I was less impressed with his Exodus series, particularly the panel discussions hosted by the Daily Wire. Toward the end of the series, they conspicuously skipped over some of the most controversial verses in the Bible, verses that challenge Peterson's understanding of the biblical narrative. Currently, I am watching his gospel series, although I have not yet finished it, and I am again disappointed, this time by his decision to examine paraphrase summaries rather than the actual gospel text. This choice seems to reflect a tendency to prioritize and protect Jordan's preferred interpretation of the biblical narrative rather than grappling with the text as it is. This brings me to his latest book, We Who Wrestle With God. I listened to the audio book version, which took me about a month to finish. I consumed the majority of it during a long flight to and from China. The flight was lengthy, and so was the book. The first 5 chapters largely recapped much of what I mentioned earlier: Peterson's perspective on the biblical narrative thus far, basically up to the end of Exodus. These chapters primarily focused on Genesis, restating and refining what he considers most relevant to the themes of this book. While well written, these chapters offered little new insight and were at times a slog to get through. Chapter 6 is where the book truly begins to shine. Here, Peterson dives into the story of Abraham, highlighting the necessity of answering the call to adventure and leaving the safety and shelter of an adolescent home, especially when one has outgrown that phase of life. This chapter speaks to the universal need for growth, maturity, and the courage to step into the unknown. Chapter 7 initially dips in momentum, but redeems itself toward the end. Peterson, who divided the chapters of this book into subsections, begins to explore fresh and important ideas. He defends the importance of free speech, the acceptance of responsibility, and the concept of necessary sins, those mistakes and missteps that ultimately lead one to confront the crucial choice of defining one's destiny, lead one to choose one's destiny. His analysis of the Jonah narrative is a standout section of the book and one of my personal highlights. From this point onward, We Who Wrestle With God becomes a compelling and worthwhile read, elevating it to the position of Peterson's second best work in my estimation. In his discussion of Jonah, Peterson emphasizes the importance of facing one's fears, taking accountability for one's actions, and embracing the struggles inherent in life. The insights here are profound and practical, resonating deeply with the reader, me. Peterson's examination of Isaac and Jesus, although through the story of Isaac's father. Though somewhat out of sequence within his telling of the biblical narrative, is another high point. His passionate critiques of existentialism, postmodernism, and socialism, particularly of the Soviet variety, are both thought provoking and energizing. He rails against the intellectual and moral pitfalls championed by figures like Derrida and Foucault, presenting his argument with conviction and fervor. As the book approaches its conclusion, Peterson offers practical and deeply personal advice of how to face life's challenges, especially in the wake of failure and loss, or just loss of direction. He provides guidance on how to regain control of oneself and push forward, even at an age when many others may be retreating or retiring from life's demands. This section is both profound and moving, clearly rooted in Peterson's own experiences of the recent years. The transformation he has undergone from an outspoken agnostic and classically liberal professor to a theistic and conservative public intellectual is palpable throughout the book. That he has become a voice of conservatism, I would say much to his dismay. His words carry the weight of someone who has wrestled with hardship and emerged changed. For me, Who Wrestle With God ranks as Peterson's second best book, surpassed only by 12 Rules for Life. I would rate it a 4 out of 5, with the caveat that the first 5 chapters merit no more than a 3 out of 5 at best. Despite the first few chapters' slower pace, the later half of the book more than compensates, offering valuable insights and practical wisdom. Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Dr. Peterson, for this work. It has the potential to inspire me and aid me to improve my life, much as 12 Rules for Life did before. While I do not always appreciate or agree with all the changes and turns you have taken or caused, I remain grateful for your thoughts and contributions. They challenge me to think deeply, even when I find myself in disagreement with you. Thank you all for listening, and good night.